A few days ago, I played a game of solo queue on my stream where I found a late round Rakan pick that completely saved my team's draft. People in my chat, of course, started asking why this Rakan pick was so good, which is when I realized that the answer I gave was something that I have legitimately never seen anyone talk about before. This Rakan pick wasn't just good for the same reason you'd expect with a counter pick. It wasn't a counter pick for lane, or a good synergy with my teammates. It was so much more than that. So forget counter picking for lane, and forget counter picking for team comp. Today, we're going to talk about counter picking for runes, items, and much more. So if you liked my last video about champion select secrets, and I know you did because it's still to this day my greatest performing video of all time, well, that means you're probably going to like this one as well. Just real quick though, I wanted to remind you guys that in the past I've hosted some really cool classes on some of League's biggest topics, and the recordings to watch them are all available right now over on my Medify page. There's a class on mid-game macro, a class on neutral objectives, and one on the early game as a whole. All of these classes took weeks of planning on my part in order to make all the slides and compile all the clips that I use, and they truly are awesome. It's basically a super long Coach Rogue video packed full of awesome concepts that goes for about an hour and a half. They're only $10 each, so head on over and watch them now. I'll leave a link to where you can find them in the video description, so head on down and go follow that link. Otherwise, on with the video.
My name's Rogue and I played League of Legends professionally for 7 years. Now I'm a full-time content creator and coach for all ranks, Iron through to Challenger. So if you want more information of what a coaching session with me will look like, you can find more information by following the link in the video description below.
Now, picking a champion by using influence from runes and items seems like a weird concept to wrap your head around. Lucky for us, we have the perfect template to begin to understand why and how this is done. So what was so good about this mystical Rakan pick I talked about in the intro? Well, look at the champions that we've picked so far in the draft. My team has Jinx and Syndra, two completely immobile carries with no real defensive abilities. Now look at the enemy team's champions and answer a question for me. What summoner spell absolutely destroys all four of these characters? Of course, it's Exhaust. Exhaust is a counter to burst damage, and all four of the enemy team champions have very obvious burst damage combos you can easily use Exhaust to mitigate. And Rakan as a champion pairs really well with Exhaust. On Rakan, you can elect to take Cosmic Insight in your runes, as well as to build Lucidity Boots as your items. These both have passives that reduce the cooldown of your summoner spells, which reduces the cooldown of Exhaust by almost a full minute, something with incredible value against this enemy team's composition. Rakan uses flash better than almost any champion in the game, with his super long range flash engage combo, and with these runes your flash cooldown is lowered by about a minute and 15 seconds as well. This allows you to do what I call flash leveraging. Simply trade flashes with someone in the first fight, and then 4 minutes later you can force an engage onto them since your flashes come back up while theirs is still on cooldown as they don't have the same runes as you, reducing its CD. Back when I was playing in the pro leagues, I came up with the idea of using Bard as a counter pick to enemy team compositions with 2 or more immobile carries. Mid laners specifically, like Orianna and Victor, have no way to dodge a Bard ultimate without their flash up. So I would take the rune Ultimate Hunter on Bard to give myself ability haste on my R, which reduces the cooldown of Bard's ultimate to be below 100 seconds. This means that if I burn an enemy's flash with the first use of my ultimate, I would now get 3 more uses of my ultimate onto the now flashless immobile enemy before their flash cooldown comes back up, basically giving me 3 free kills, all because of the rune's ultimate haste that I took. I also used to do this with Leona and her ultimate, and these days I sometimes still do it when playing Jarvan for fun. But the most common version is still the one that lowers your flash cooldown on engages, which you can commonly see on things like Diana, Gragas, or Rel for example. Okay, so the enemy team is full of burst damage assassins, which is why we take Exhaust and pair it with Cosmic Insight and Lucidity Boost to reduce its cooldown. But what about our items? What should my first item be that I build this game? There's only one real answer here. Locket is amazing against burst damage, and against Diana specifically, it's super easy to use as a massive team-wide shield to block entirely the damage from her Area of Effect ultimate. The rune we already mentioned, Cosmic Insight, also gives item haste that reduces the cooldown of our Locket shield, now giving us a third reason why this rune specifically counters the enemy team comp. And since the Locket shield is so good at blocking the enemy team's burst damage, surely the shield from the Keystone Guardian would be good at doing so too. A rune that's cooldown is now also being reduced by our Cosmic Insight rune. Rakan is a counter to the enemy team's champions as a champion, but he is also a counter to their champions because of the runes and items he can elect to take. This is not something that is exclusive to Rakan or even the role of support in any way. Just look at this enemy team composition. What item could you build against them that would screw them all over? Well, they're all auto attack based champions, so if you build a Frozen Heart that takes away their attack speed, they would be really upset. So what's a champion that could build Frozen Heart? I don't know, Rammus. Okay, great, we can pick Rammus, but what if you're the mid laner? You can't play Rammus mid, right? How about we pick Rise? Rise can build an early Frozen Heart. He gains bonus damage when he builds mana items, and he can spam out more spells with the insane amount of ability haste the item gives, and the early armor stacking would be really good for his laning phase since he's versing a physical damage jungle mid. I'll tell you what, I haven't played a ton of mid lane. I don't know what the Akshan Rise matchup is. I imagine it's not very good for Rise when I think about it. But all I know is that having plated steel caps and a Frozen Heart early on this champion against that team comp, I don't care if you go 0-10, you're probably going to carry the game anyway, because the build path is just that good for you this game. This is the component of counterpicking that no one ever talks about. They all want a champion that counters the other champions in the game, but they never think about a champion that builds runes, items, and summoner spells that also count the enemy team's champions. This game, for example, I picked Lulu because it's a great lane matchup, but I also picked Lulu because I was against Sivir and Ornn. And on Lulu, I can rush first item Shurelya's, and use the active effect to give my team movement speed in order to dodge and disengage every time the enemy tries to hard engage with their Sivir Ornn ultimate combo. Aatrox destroys heavily physical damage based team comps since he can build plated steel caps, and he can build the item Death Stance. Death Stance is a staple item on Aatrox because of its passive having such good synergy with the inbuilt lifesteal in his kit as well as the reset on his ultimate. It just so happens that the item also has armor on it, making Aatrox good against physical damage because of the item he likes to build. And to the contrary of Aatrox, Zac works really well against mostly magical damage team compositions because he loves to build the item Spirit Visage, a magic resist item that amplifies his inbuilt healing, as well as the item Abyssal Mask since he's a magic damage based champion that wants tank stats. His champion just has so many itemization choices against magic damage compared to others, making him great into these types of comps. Amumu and Morgana are also great against tank comps full of tanks and bruisers, since they can both build Liandry's that does percent max health damage, good against tanks, as well as the item Bloodsong, which shreds enemy magic resist for them and their teammates, which again is really good against tanks. And on Cannon, you pretty much always build a Zhonya's Hourglass by your third item anyway, because it has great synergy with your ult. So why not just make sure to pick Cannon into champions like Camille, Zed, and Nautilus, whose ultimates you could all dodge with that Zhonya's active. And finally, someone like Cassiopeia is awesome to play when versing Burst Assassins, because every item she builds has a bunch of health in it. Not even mentioning the fact she doesn't need to build boots on Cassio, she can just start building Rod of Ages and stack her Rod of Ages and her tier item faster, which we all know is just completely broken against burst champions because of this stupid shield it gives. Now this is only talking about items. We spoke about runes earlier, but to give you more examples, often when playing against some mobile champions who don't have dashes, the Keystone Glacial Augment has extra value, as the enemy team without dashes will just get caught up in the slow field without a way to get out of it. And in a different draft where you see the enemy team has a champion like Karthus, the Keystone Guardian is super nice as the shield can be used to save teammates from the ultimate. So maybe you think about picking a champion that takes Guardian instead of some hook champion that takes Aftershock. I think you get the point by now. A counter pick shouldn't just be something that is good for a lane matchup. It's something that functions well in the game as a whole, and so very often when picking your own champion pool, it's good to have champions that are good against the opposite thing. Say I'm helping a top laner choose his new champion pool to climb with. He loves playing a lane dominant style where he can go for early solo kills, so let's keep that in mind. Well, Darius would suit this player perfectly. Darius is a lane bully and he pops off in a solo queue environment. The only problem with Darius is that he can only be played into tanky and short range enemy team comps. He does great when he's allowed to free hit and stack his passive on tanks, and he can lifesteal tank low damage comps with his Q healing and Conqueror. But he has no gap closer, and so he's very easily kited and vulnerable into long range champions. So maybe this new Darius player should also include into their champion pool something like Kled. Kled is also a very lane dominant top laner who can go for early solo kills just like Darius can. The difference is, Kled sucks against tanks, but he is amazing against squishy and long range champions. He has a hook to pull them in, 2 dashes on his E to gap close, and the most amazing ultimate in the game when it comes to making ranged top laners regret their choices in life. And on the other hand, a mid laner who likes to play Syndra probably doesn't have a very good time when they verse a team comp full of assassins who just teleport onto them and one-shot them. So maybe this Syndra player should include something like Lissandra in their champion pool, or even something like Cassiopeia as mentioned earlier, as these champions strive against the things Syndra struggles against. And I'm sure there's some psychopath out there who plays Zac against mostly magic damage comps, and Ryze or Aatrox against mostly physical damage comps, because the build paths of these champions are good against that damage type. The ball is now in your court to go build your own champion pool with all of these things in mind. I can't go through every possibility, but hopefully I got your mind to start thinking in a new way about your counter picks. So next time you go to lock in your next champion select, don't just pick a champion to counter the enemy team. Also pick runes and items that do. Now, hopefully I impressed you enough in this video to incentivize you to finally go check out those classes I mentioned in the intro. The link to where you can watch all 3 of them is in the video description below, so go check them out now. Otherwise, my name's Rogue, thanks for watching, have a great one everyone.